Hi everyone, a massive welcome back to my channel. I hope you're having a lovely week and I hope you had a lovely Easter. As you can probably see, I'm filming this video right next to an Easter tree. Does anyone else have an Easter tree in their house right now? I didn't know they were a thing, if I'm going to be honest with you, but my mum is so lovely and puts together a little Easter tree every Easter. She's basically found a branch from a tree outside and she's made it into a little Easter egg tree. It's just so fun and silly. I just love it. I think Easter egg trees are something of an older generation, perhaps. I'm not really sure. Any occasion is worth celebrating and putting decorations up. Hence why I bought out my own Easter merchandise. Did any of you see it? I posted it on my Instagram. It's me eating, or shall I say, scoffing down a load of chocolate eggs, which I have actually been doing a lot of this year. Sometimes I don't eat any chocolate at Easter. Other times I kind of forget that summer's coming and my body probably shouldn't pack on any more pounds. A lot of people also said to me, hey, should you bring out Easter merch if it's just about, you know, one day of the year which people forget about as soon as it finishes? And I was like, hell no. And if you take a picture of yourself in the shirt, I will put your picture in a video of mine. Anyway, that's enough of me talking about my merch. So today I wanted to get nice and cozy. It's really rainy outside. I would have liked to have had like a window behind me showing all the rain and making this all cozy and cute, but I only have a few rooms in this house and I couldn't find the perfect place. I'm not very organised today. I wanted to chat with you about something which I was inspired by when I went to the Spiritualist Church. I've spoken about the Spiritualist Church a couple times on this channel. There's a few videos on it if you're interested in why I go, why I believe in it, why I love it, and what it's changed about my life. I will link it somewhere. The church there isn't what I automatically think of when I hear a church. Like, it's not heavy or anything like that. I'm not saying church is heavy, but some people freak out about the idea of church. But I like going to my church when I feel a little bit low down, maybe when I've like given up hope. Humanity is frustrating me, when there's a lot going on that just makes me think, what's the point? It kind of gives me back a spring in my step. Went there the other day. There's a few things going on in my life right now, so I always find myself at the church more when I'm a little bit sad, or maybe even when I'm really happy because I want to do more things, so I end up going to the church. Beside the point, a lady was there as the guest speaker. Before she did her mediumship demonstration, she gave a reading on the magic vase, which is a well-known story. It kind of rung a lot of bells when she was reading it out. I think maybe someone read it to me at school or something like that. It was a story that I kind of weirdly remembered from somewhere but wasn't quite sure where, and it kind of made me think, yes, like I love stuff like this and it's totally what I stand for as a person, and I'm just really glad that I happened to be at the church to hear this story so I can sit here and say the story to you. So I'm passing on this sort of message which is kind of very linked to what I'm about to say, what this whole video is about, but we'll get back to that in a minute. So I'm going to be kind of telling you this story by memory. I don't want to read it out. I want to try my best to make sure I know the story by heart, and hopefully you can still enjoy it even though it's probably a little bit pants the way I tell it. But this is the story of the magic vase. So there was a family in a not very well off part of town. They were a pretty poor family, didn't have a lot to their name, and they were really struggling. They had suffered for such a long time that they were all as a family becoming more and more depressed with their situation and unhappy and generally quite sad about their life, and naturally that would affect your everyday mood. And it didn't take long for the entire family to be affected by depression, and sadly in no position to see any change soon. So one of the sons of the family, a young lad, went to visit the market. Sorry, phone's going off. He went to the local market down the road in town to have a little look around and people watch. A lot of people like people watching, including me myself. He was just bored. He wanted to do a little bit of exploring. While he was looking at this market and whilst he was viewing what was happening, what people were doing and what they were buying, he noticed a stall of warm baked breads and it smelled delicious and lovely, and he watched other people smell the baked bread, buy the bread, walk off with these big bags of warm baked fresh bread. He then came across a jewellery store. They were beautiful pieces of jewellery. They were sparkling in the sun. They looked gorgeous. They were filled with different colours. It looked magical. He could just imagine how lovely his mum would look in something like that. And he watched people walk up to the stall, gaze at the gorgeousness and give in and buy lots of different pieces of jewellery that took their fancy. He also saw a fish stall packed with lots of fresh fish that was being sold fresh from the sea that morning. He walked past the fruit stall. There was loads of fruit, so bright and colourful, and his mouth watered when he walked past it. However, he got to the last stall of this market and it was a second-hand stall. He'd never noticed this in the market before. He'd seen a lot of markets in the local town before, but he hadn't noticed the stall at the very end, which was a second-hand stall. He was more appealed to this stall than the others. He was more attracted to the different odd bits and pieces that were laid out over the table, so he went to investigate. He then came across a very pretty vase. It was a big, lovely, blue, jeweled vase. He couldn't stop looking at it and he couldn't believe it was second-hand. He saw it and he was just in awe. It flickered in the sun, it shone in the right places. It was just so beautiful. And he looked at it for a while, put his hands in his pockets, realised that he could buy this vase if he wanted it today, but it would mean he would have no money left in his pockets. But he couldn't stop thinking about this vase that was in his hands, and he knew that he didn't want to let it go and let somebody else have it. He really wanted this vase. So he gave the very last of his money to the woman behind the stall. And as he gave over the money that was required for the vase to the lady behind the stall, she wrapped up the vase very carefully in brown paper packaging, looked to the little boy and said, "Make sure you look after this vase because it's a magic vase." The boy agreed. He thought it was a beautiful vase. It must be magic. There's something lovely about it. It just makes you feel happy when you look at it. So he smiled, took the vase and trotted his way home. When he got back to his house, he instantly wanted to put the vase out for show. Yes, he was a little bit worried what people would say about the vase. How did he afford it? Why did he buy it? What was the point in spending your money on something you can't eat? This isn't family who can just do things like that. But he tried to forget about those thoughts and he proudly put the vase in the front room because he felt it needed to be seen by as many people as possible. Strangely, no one in the family had mentioned the fact that this boy had bought the vase and that it was probably very expensive by looking at it, particularly for a family that didn't have a lot of money. Nobody had mentioned it, but everybody had noticed how beautiful the vase was. Everybody looked at it and was instantly glad that the vase was now in the front room because it looked beautiful. And the little boy's dad looked at it a little longer than everybody else. He held the vase up and he looked around the room and said to himself, "This vase looks so nice in this room that it's made the rest of the room look shabby. The walls haven't been painted in years. Everything looks dull." The sadness that the family were holding was starting to be apparent in the walls, in the ceilings, in the windows. Anyone who would enter that home would know that this family hadn't made changes to this house for years. He looked up and down at the shabby walls and the fact they hadn't been painted for years. He said to himself, "If I give these walls a coat of paint, then this room would look so much fresher and nicer." So off he went up into the loft and found a dusty old tin of paint he'd put up there years ago when he'd first decorated the front room, and he gave the front room a nice new lick of fresh coat. When one of the other sons of the family had noticed that the walls in the front room had been painted and had noticed how lovely and bright and fresh the front room looked, it made him realise how shabby and how dirty the windows were and how they'd been neglected for so long. So he went into the shed, he found a bucket, filled it up with water and gave the windows the first clean they had had in years. It brightened up the front room even more. It looked lovely. The sun actually shone through the windows. Because of the window wash he decided to do, it made the house look even lovelier. The mum of the family had noticed these windows had been washed. She loved how they looked. She stood by the windows and gazed out at them, and because she hadn't done this for a while, she'd only just realised when looking out the window how terrible she had been to neglect the front garden. She looked through the window and looked down at all the weeds and said to herself, "I must do something about that." So off she went out into the front garden and she dug it all over and decided to plant some fresh new seeds for the upcoming spring ahead. Once April came, the garden had blossomed into this gorgeous, colourful arrangements of all sorts of flowers. It was such a beautiful sight to see, and anyone walking past that house would know that that family living in the house took pride in their garden and loved looking after their home. This was when the youngest daughter of the family had gone outside into the garden to play, as she would when summer started. to come. So whilst she was super engrossed in a game she was playing with her friends, the flowers in the garden caught her eye. She hadn't noticed that the year before. They were so pretty and they reminded her of her mum. So she walked over to the flowers, grabbed some of her favourite few, skipped back into her house and went to go find her mum. "Mum, these are for you," she said. "They're beautiful. They look just like you. And they're for you because I love you, Mum." The mum looked down at her lovely daughter who just said something so precious that she even let out a little tear. She started crying and said, "Thank you so much." She was still welling up when she walked into the front room. She looked at the flowers before reaching on over as she placed the flowers into the magic vase. Oh, it's such a lovely story. It's quite a simple story. Maybe some of you are like, really, is that it? But I love it. I think you can see it meaning different things depending on what you think's most important to take from that story, but I love it because there are so many things that you can take from that story. That little story was sort of like a message to me, giving me that nudge about what it is I do what I do for, because I've always been passionate about making other people happy. Ever since I was a kid, I've been such a people pleaser. It used to really frustrate me and upset me if I'd ever made someone angry, and I always wanted to make sure people were happy, and I got very uncomfortable if they weren't, and I always wanted to be the one responsible to help, or I felt like it was my fault if people weren't happy. I just constantly wanted to be around people that made me happy. I wanted to feel that positive buzz in the room when I was with a group of people, and if I ever found myself around someone who wasn't that way, then it would affect my own mood and I would go about my day differently. Oh! Where did that go? So that was always a very important thing to me, and when I made my first YouTube video, it was obviously just out of fun, as everyone says when they start YouTube. Made a few silly stuff, but it wasn't until people started saying that I had made an impact on their life, I started thinking, what? This is a complete new different thing that I am able to do, as well as, you know, just keeping my friends and family happy. Making content like this, making videos that, although they're silly, although I'm just a regular 22-year-old living with her parents still in the bottom of England, like there's nothing exciting about me, I am still able to make a positive effect on other people. And someone from an outside, like an outsider's point of view, might see that and say, she's full of herself, like why does she think she can make a positive effect? I don't necessarily know why I do, I don't necessarily know how I do bring your life positivity, but I don't care either, as long as I am. Like, I don't know what it is or why, I know that I am, and I think that's enough for me to want to carry on. And whether other people think that's a weird thing, they think YouTube's just a weird thing in general, that YouTubers can change people's lives, I don't know, but like I just said, I don't care. It's a thing and it's great, and I think I continue doing what I do because people say that I've impacted them, so that's why I do it. Sure, I've made a living out of that, which is a very weird concept, but if anything that's just a bonus because it means I can do it more and concentrate on nothing but this. Being positive and trying to spread energy to other people is what I live for. In fact, sometimes it can be very frustrating. I take on other people's emotions very, very easily, so if I walk into a room where people are waiting to go in for a job interview, I'm going to feel nervous even if I don't have a job interview. Like, I soak in other people's emotions very, very quickly, so if I walk into a room and everyone's angry, I'm going to start getting frustrated for absolutely no reason other than the fact there's a lot of frustrated people in the room. I'm not the only person like that. We as humans do that. It's quite a common thing to take on other people's emotions and to be inspired by the way someone's acting or thinking or feeling. So with that whole story, the way I see it is your attitude kind of ripples out to other people. So the fact that somebody had noticed how nice the front room looked inspired him to go wash the windows. Somebody noticing how nice the windows looked inspired somebody to plant the flowers. And the best thing about that is you don't always know if your action has made some sort of domino effect or not, but that doesn't really need to be the reason you do it. Just do things because you feel inspired to do them, and you have no idea about the potential that they have. Yes, I have a YouTube channel. I've got a fairly big reach, so I'm able to communicate with a lot of people at once, and you might say, well, I don't have that, so how am I going to inspire people? You don't need a big audience, or you don't even need a audience to inspire anyone. You could walk out in the street, hold a conversation with someone that makes their day. And if you're going to say to me, hey, that won't make a difference to someone's day, you have no idea what you're talking about, then if I was to tell you not to smile at the checkout when you buy a carton of milk, milk, not to say thank you, and to generally just be grumpy and miserable when you're served by the cashier lady. You're probably going to believe me more if I say that's going to affect her day. She's going to get this huge amount of negative energy from you, and she's going to pass it on onto her day. I'm not saying it's about like making huge projects to make people happy or going out of your way throughout the day hugely to make a big difference. Like, I'm not saying you need to take a big hour out of your day, do something. If you're a busy person, I'm not saying that. A little hello, a little is everything okay, a little piece of advice for somebody who is feeling a little bit stuck in their ways can go so far. So a little example of this is what I was saying about the lady at the checkout. Let's say somebody had treated her really badly that day because they'd had a bad day themselves and it was really grinding on them, and they just lashed out on this cashier lady because she had accidentally charged him wrong. A problem they could easily fix, but he got angry, started shouting. She's gonna have a bad day for the rest of the day. She feels bad, she feels terrible, she's been shouted at. No one likes to be shouted at. Next minute, she's gonna find herself going home to her family. She's gonna bring that negative energy into her family life. That's going to easily affect them as well. Have you ever been home alone and someone comes into the house and they're clearly in a bad mood and they just feel crap and they just want everyone to know that they feel crap? You suddenly feel like you can't really be entitled to the good mood that you might have had before. Like, you kind of feel as though you need to suppress it a little bit because she's in a bad mood, and now you feel a bit pants really because she's killed the vibe. Someone could easily do that. Let's say the checkout lady had did that. She's putting a bad mood on her kids or her husband, her boyfriend, whatever it is. They're going to go to bed on that. They're going to feel quite crap when they're in bed because their wife's had a bad day and she doesn't want to talk about it. The next day they're going to wake up, whether that's the kid going to school or the husband going to work, feeling shit about themselves too. Now, like the story I was saying at the beginning of the video, if we were to put a flip on that and she decided that man who had treated her unfairly at work was having a shit day and that's okay, but somehow she was able to see through that and not let that, you know, soak into her day too, she could go home, tell her husband what had happened. Let's say he reassures her and say, I'm really sorry that happened, but she's like, it's alright, it wasn't my fault, he was probably having a bad day, I'll get over it, I'll be fine. Not only does that mean now she's not going to have a negative effect on the energy in the family, it's also pretty inspiring to know that she has that attitude, and that itself is a really positive thing to think about. She might even have the complete opposite effect on her husband or boyfriend or whoever it is she's coming home to. So if something like that ever happens to him, he's going to remember how she saw through that and how that was pretty cool actually, and he can do the same too. And who knows, because she's keeping up positive, light vibes, he'll wake up tomorrow in a good mood and a great one, and unlike in the situation before, he's going to be a lot more productive this time, and who knows where that could lead. Let's say he's self-employed, he goes and gets himself a really big client that day because he manages to say the right things at the right time and he's in a proper good mood, and therefore things work out really well for him. I'm talking about a totally made up situation here, but that's just me pulling out a random scene that is easily believable and can easily happen. I'm sure everybody watching this video knows of somebody in their life who's such a strangely positive person all the time and holds such a light energy, and you just want to be around them all the time, and it's such a lovely feeling to be around them all the time because it makes you feel good about yourself. I have spoken about my nan on this channel for quite a while. My dad's mum, who's been passed away for a few years now, she was one of those people to me, and going to her house and just listening to her talk about life and her opinions on things was so nice because she was so carefree and just, I don't know, constantly looking on the bright side of stuff that most would see as a burden and just a sign from the universe that life is hard and a struggle. And that's why I believe people's energies and attitudes can affect other people. If I was able to go to my nan's house and hear her say a few stories or just talk to me or just be around her, I shouldn't even need to speak, like I could just feel the vibes from her, then if I'm aware that I could do that when I used to see her, then I know that I can do that myself. You don't even need to know whether what you've said or done to someone, whether you've asked someone if they're alright, whether you've walked into the office in a cheerful mood. You don't know whether all of that is making any difference on other people. They might secretly love the fact that you always breeze into the office looking cheerful and great, even though they never tell you that. You don't know. That's the thing. I never know if my nan knew that I loved her energy and thought that she was very inspiring. So don't get down on yourself when you think that you don't help people and that you don't do enough for people. Maybe you ask someone if they're okay and they open up to you and they say they're not and things aren't great and you really want to help them but you know you can't and you're not sure what you can do. Trust me, being an ear for somebody is enough, or even a smile for somebody is enough. Let the thought of that keep you holding that spring in your step and putting out a very light, positive energy into the universe, because I promise you it goes very, very far. That's what I try and do on this channel. That's my main message and point of being here. I'm not here to do anything else. Sure, I put makeup on sometimes. Sure, I show you what clothes I bought, but my main priority is just to be here as a person that can hopefully make you feel a little bit better about your day. And I want to be that ripple effect, whether that's because someone inspired me back in the day and I'm doing the same now, whether I'm the start of that, I don't know. Basically keep focused on that and try not to let a bad mood get in your way too much, because you have no idea of the power that has on other people and how far that can actually go. Much further than just affecting yourself, you're going to affect a lot of other people. I'm going to end that now. This has been a long video and a bit of a hippy dippy one, so sorry if that's not really your thing. And I will see you guys very, very soon. Please click the bell, because YouTube is no longer putting out videos on subscription boxes unless the bell is clicked. So click the bell, because otherwise you won't get told. Join me on social media if you haven't already to be notified every time I make a new video. I love you guys so much and see you very soon. Mwah!